Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode. Today is something a bit new and different. I am ranking all 41 God cards in Magic Arena. So grab yourself a drink. We might be here a while, but it might be a bit interesting to see where I think these cards rank in terms of 1v1 Historic Brawl. Let's go. Okay, now bear in mind, some of these will be changed in Arena due to alchemy changes. So I am just going by what I have available here in Scryfall. So I do apologise if they are not accurate to the actual in-game, but to be honest, they're pretty similar most of the time. You can kind of figure out if the numbers, for instance, on Alrundar, if he's 4 mana rather than 5, then you'll know that he will go either up or down in my estimations, and the inverse. If he's more expensive, then you can kind of figure out from there. Okay, so annoyingly, I've had to use 2 apps to do this because my recording software doesn't want to record my image exe. So I had to use 2 browser captures simultaneously, which is kind of irritating, but there we go. Let's get started. Okay, so we'll start with the order on the right, which is alphabetical, and on the left is where I will put the card in the tier list. So Elrond. So bear in mind, this is for Historic Brawl 1v1, just to remind you. Elrond, God of the Cosmos. This guy, it's pretty damn slow, and on the end step it kind of wants you to guess cards on top of your deck and then you put them into your hand. The other side, which is very infrequently used, Hacker, Whispering Raven, 2 mana 2/2. When it deals damage to a player, return it to its owner's hand, then scry 2. Weirdly, that's actually quite a powerful aggro card, only we just never see it. I think it's because returning it to your hand is just so detrimental, and the 3 toughness is actually pretty good. So for a blocker, it's decent, but it's just too slow and weird on this side. And on this side, it's just too slow and weird. It's a shame because it's a cool concept. It's meant to be Odin. And yeah, I just, you'll never see this on the ladder. And the randomness really hurts it. You never want random in 1v1. It's just too, if you miss getting cards with this, it's just going to be too devastating. The only way you could probably abuse this if you use top deck manipulation, but even then, I just think it's way too slow. So sadly, I think Aaron's going to go into D here. Next up, we've got Asmodeus the Archfiend. Let's click into it to make it a bit larger. So this is relatively new to the roster of gods, but again, really don't see it very often. It's got kind of necropotence built in. If you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library, place down instead. Draw 7 cards, so you'll exile them, and then you have to pay another black to return all cards exiled with them to your hand, and you lose that much life. So it's like Grizzlebrand and Necropotence had a baby. The fact it's 6 mana is incredibly damning here. So sadly, due to the cost and how slow the ability is, you're gonna have to pay 6. You're gonna pay 10 mana to get anything out of this. Is getting into D. In fact, if there's something lower than D here, it would probably go into that. Athreos, Shroud Veiled. So again, 6 mana really hurts this card because normally it'd be pretty good. I mean, if you can go long and use board wipes forever and ever until you hit this Athreos, and then start putting coin counters on creatures and start bringing them back, I think it does have its place. And the fact it is an indestructible enchantment does mean that 6 mana is slightly more rewarding. Now, the issue is actually getting them out and sticking. Now, bear in mind, a lot of the top tier decks, so if we're talking about Hellq, they will not care about Athos. They will literally ignore it, and they probably won't play that many creatures anyway. So saying that, I think this Athreos is going to go probably into C. I just feel like it has potential, but at 6 mana, it doesn't even become a creature to have 7 devotion. It's just too slow, unfortunately. Going from that into Bergi, which is an absurd card, you'll probably never use the Harnfell side, although that is actually pretty damn good. Discard card, exile top 2, you can play. So Bergi is a combo commander. So the fact whenever you play any spell you get red is broken pretty much. There's so many combo decks that want to use Bergi, and sadly, because my list is based on power, I have to put a S rank really, because You can pretty much win on turn 3, 4, 5 with this. Well, maybe not 3, but turn 4 and 5 most definitely if she's untouched, because you've got stuff like Paradox Engine. You can get Urubrai Scout to basically have the same ability, but for instance, and you can just endlessly loop. So Bergie is an incredibly strong Storm commander. If you're thinking about building a Storm deck, this could be for you. It's weird because she's just a 3/3, right? But a lot of the times, no one really cares about power toughness when stuff is so broken like this, and no one I've ever seen in my life has used creatures you control combos twice. It's such a random. Like, I get this there for flavor reasons, but they tried to make a flavorful card, but then they accidentally made a broken infinite combo card, which is kind of funny. But yeah, sadly, this list is a bit misleading because it's not my favorite list. It's a power list, so we're gonna have to put her rest because she is that powerful and definitely one to be feared. Remember though, this list is subjective and it may differ from what you think, so bear that in mind. Next up, we have Bontu the Glorified. This is by far one of the worst gods ever printed. The stats make it look great, don't they? 3 mana, 4/6. Now, the thing I don't understand is, in Magic Design, you put menace on things you want to attack with, right? But then why give it 6 toughness? If the toughness is higher, you're then telling another part of your brain, okay, I want to block, but since when do you want to be blocking with a god? Now, the only way this can actually attack or block is if another one of your creatures dies, which is pathetic. Paying 2, sack another creature, scry 1, each opponent loses 1, you gain 1. It doesn't even draw your card. If that said, pay 1, sack a creature, draw a card, drain 1, that would probably be a bit too broken, but at least it would be on. I don't know. I don't even know if it would be broken because you still have to pay mana and you're losing creatures. I think that would be the only reason this is playable, but because just how terribly designed this card is, and I feel so sorry for Chase Stern, the artist, for this, because this art is absolutely stunning and spectacular, and I really tried to make this work in Paper Commander years ago when this came out, but yeah, in Historic Brawl, I just don't think it's viable at all. It doesn't do anything. The only thing which this is good for, which don't tell anyone else, but I use a lot of these old gods for crewing vehicles. So crewing vehicles is pretty good rate, 3 mana for a 4/6. It's okay. Even then, it's just like, Kevnet's a 3 mana 5/5 flying. So yeah, it just doesn't do anything very well. If you want an aristocrat's god, I don't know. It's just not fantastic. So with that in mind, we'll definitely put this at D. It just doesn't pan out, guys. Don't fall for this trap. Next up, we have Kozima, God of the Voyage. People do actually use this very infrequently. It's a very strange blue card in that it cares about landfall. So on your upkeep, you may exile it. If you do, it gains whenever land enters. If it's exiled, you may put a Voyage counter on it. And if you don't, return it to the battlefield with X counters on it and draw X for X's number of Voyage counters. So it's got weird landfall triggers when it's in exile. I think another reason people don't use this is because it's too wordy. It's trying to be really smart and flavorful, but it ends up coming across clunky as hell. It's all one paragraph. The mind finds it really hard to digest, in my opinion, and that puts me off. And I've been playing Magic for 12-ish years, right? So it's putting me off. Imagine how it's going to put off maybe younger people or people new to the game. And then probably even better than this side. It's okay, that side, but then we've got the vehicle. Now we're talking. This vehicle is actually pretty good if you're doing it for this vehicle, because whenever a vehicle you control, any vehicle, bear in mind, deals damage to a player, they exile that many cards. You may play lands from amongst those cards as long as it remains exiled. I think this is definitely an unsung hero. This is actually pretty aggressive. The crew one is ridiculous as well. You can crew this with literally any creature, and you get a 3/3 that gets lands. I think that's pretty good. Maybe better in the 99 of a landfall Simic Shell. What do I think of this? I feel like it's close. It's just so strange. The 2/4 feels useless. It comes down, it does nothing. Calling it a god is, I don't know, it's a weird, is it like a transformer? Transforms into a ship? Was it the person on the ship? I don't really know. But I really want to give it C, I think. I just can't imagine it being much stronger than a C. It just feels too slow. It just dies C is okay, purely because the other side is actually pretty legit. I think this is fine. I don't think it would be higher than a C though, sadly. Next up, Jero and Hazaret. This is definitely an unsung hero. We don't see this enough. I think it's incredibly good. I think the art lets it down a bit. It's just way too saturated, so people probably don't resonate with stuff. You'd be surprised how visual people are, especially me. If I don't like the look of something, I don't really want to use it. Sometimes it's kind of odd. So as long as you have one or fewer cards in hand, Jeru and has vigilance and haste. That's really good. And then whenever you attack with them, look at the top 6. You may exile a legendary creature card, and then until turn you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So it's a bit like Winota, but a one shot. I think it's great. It's 5 mana for 5/4. Obviously, the lower the amount of cards in your hand, the better. It's a bit similar to the original Hazaret, obviously, because that's what they're trying to harken back to. I think it's perfectly fine as borrowed commanders go. Just imagining Commander, which is a smart, stronger format paper Commander. When you imagine you got like I don't know, Emrakul, Ulamog, just playing it for free. It's a lot better in Commander because you've got stuff like Lightning Greaves, but I still think it's fine in this format. It's perfectly acceptable. And in terms of power level, I actually think it's quite good because a lot of people might think it's bad when it doesn't protect itself, but the fact it can have vigilance and haste is really strong. Late game, let's imagine you've exhausted all your borrowed cards, your opponent's exhausted all their removal and board wipes. Suddenly, you smash Jero and Hazaret out, and you get a second creature in your second main phase, and your opponent's like now gasping and thinking, "Oh crap!" Obviously, you have to build around it, and you can miss, but I just think this is awesome. It might be a bit of bias, but I'm going to put this at B. If you miss it, it's absolutely terrible, but you can still at least make this kind of like a Voltron build with swords, maybe some auras. Yeah, definitely rate it a B. It is 5 mana though, so if it dies once, it does suck a lot. But anything with haste in the commander, I think is actually really good because it's a finishing blow, right? It's fantastic against newer players as well because people just don't realize haste denies the regular rules of the game. People normally wait one turn to attack, but haste is definitely one of the most underrated abilities, being able to smash in, as long as you meet the conditions, but every commander has conditions, right? Egon, God of Death. This is quite possibly one of the worst ones as well. I really feel sorry for Black, 3 mana Black Gods. They're not doing so great on here, are they? So it's got Death Touch, 6/6. So again, it looks good. However, on your upkeep, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you can't, sack Egon and draw a card. Absolutely terrible. 2 cards from your graveyard. That is a tall order every single turn, which means you can't really play this on turn 3 because unless you've milled, 3 or 4 cards in your graveyard, Egon's probably going to die. I think it was probably designed for 60 cards where you can use multiples of it and then Throne of Death, which synergizes with itself. But in Commander or Historic Brawl, that's a lot tougher to do because you can't have both out. Annoyingly, this side is probably better. Milling automatically for 1 black every single turn is great in Muldrotha decks. So in terms of this side, I think this side is probably well, in terms of power, this doesn't have any power because it doesn't do anything to kill your opponent. But it's in terms of utility, it's decent. But I think the front side brings it down because you're not going to win the game from this side. Let's face it, Throne of Death. Such a shame because I feel like it's a Game of Thrones reference, and this is Joffrey of some kind. It's almost like Joffrey and some kind of weird amalgamation. But yeah, sadly, I think I'm actually going to put this at D because it just fails on the front side. It just doesn't do much. Again, good as a vehicle commander, but not as anything else, in my opinion. Erebos, Bleak-Hearted. This is a tricky one. I think this is good. Again, the fact it doesn't really do anything immediately impactful kind of makes it a bit slow. Whenever another creature dies, you can pay 2 to draw a card. That is lovely if you have a lot of creatures. In fact, this works quite well with the new Ashiok. Instead of paying life, you exile the top 2. Pretty sure that works. And you can sack a creature to give another creature -2/-1. I don't like cards that make you sack things for a cost as well. You're already losing the goddamn creature. Paying 2 feels a lot. -2, -1 feels too small for this as well. Paying for 4 mana, not doing anything in the same turn. It's a really nice board wipe kind of buffer. Like if your opponent board wipes and you have 3 creatures out, you can draw 3 cards that's losing 6. So there's definitely upsides, but I just feel like it's just too slow. And by itself, it just doesn't feel like it hits the spot. Again, another black commander at D rank. How strange. This is pretty odd, isn't it? Okay, well, you probably all know what Ezeka is going to be on this list. This side, nothing to really shout about. Kind of bland. But obviously, this side is the Prismatic Bridge. So this automatically goes to S rank because it's just absolutely broken. It's one of the most broken cards ever made when it first came out, and it still is. The fact it just automatically gets you stuff like Ugin or, whatever the hell creature planeswalkers that you can put in your deck. It's so powerful. I will say that its power level has dropped slightly since launch, but not because of the reason you think, because they keep making more powerful cards. Now, it's fine and it's not fine because, well, my logic is I've kind of come to this conclusion, right? The more powerful cards there are, the fewer of them you can use in your deck. I know it sounds weird, but if you, let's say your deck has 60 slots, so you've got 40 lands and 60 slots. If Wizards makes 70 broken cards for your deck, now there's a decision to be made. So my solution to broken cards, in a weird, this is going to sound really weird, but it's just keep printing powerful cards because eventually you can't use them all. The only issue here is stuff like Rusko and Ragavan in the command zone, but even then, I feel like over time the power level will go down a bit. But yeah, Rusko is another conversation. But yeah, Prismatic Bridge, I think it's okay. I've grown used to it. It's still Halq, 100%. But yeah, front side, no worries. This side, if you don't get rid of it, you will regret it. Even if you think, oh, I'll give it 1 turn, do not give it 1 turn. The random always gets them something good. It's ludicrous. So yeah, S rank, Prismatic Bridge, God Eternal Bontu. Okay, so it's a black card. I actually think this is pretty awesome. I think this is actually the perfect black sack outlet. If you looked at the other ones before, you have to pay mana to sack, but this just comes in automatically. It sacks anything, any number of permanents, and draw that many cards. This is absolutely fantastic, and you can just there's a lot of different synergies you can go off with this. 5 mana is fine because you will probably win the game the turn this comes out. One example would be, let's say you have 2 Blood Artists out, which is possible, and some other drain triggers, and you've got like 10 creatures, come down, sacrifice them all, boom. You've probably won the game from all those drain triggers. I actually think God Eternal Bontu sits probably at B rank. It's really good. It's not quite good enough to be A because you have to have a huge field, but it does redeem the black gods in the in our tier list so far. And also when it dies, you can get it back by putting it in the top third card from the library from the top. Next up, we have God Eternal Kevnet, which is a really good body, 4 mana, 4/5 flying. But the issue is it's pretty tough, I've found, to actually get the trigger of, which is for the first card you draw each turn as you draw it whenever you reveal instant and sorcery. Copy that card unless, and you may cast a copy, and it costs 2 less to cast. So you basically get a free copy of it that's 2 cheaper. The issue I've found with this is you want to have so many instants and sorceries in the deck, but they're not the best type, really. You do tend to need to have permanence to win the game, so it's tricky to build this unless you just go hard with the spells. It's not impossible, you just have to be really dedicated. But as I said, the 4 mana, 4/5 flying body is incredible stats, and you can probably kill people with it. You just have to protect it a lot. But then the other side is mono blue decks want to play a lot of counter spells, but it doesn't synergize with that either, really, unless the counter spells are something like Sublime Epiphany, which does more than just counter, and they're reactive, whereas this ability is proactive. So it's kind of one of those design choices where it belies the actual intent of the card. So I want to put it high, but again, I just think it's just a bit too clunky, and it's just going to die all the time. I'll put it at C. It's got potential, but But yeah, I'm not massively impressed with this one. God Eternal Arketra, however, is an absolute powerhouse. This is something which you do not see very often, and I'm not sure why, because in terms of mono white, this is ludicrously good. The fact it has double strike, I don't know what it is with these gods having such huge toughnesses and then offensive abilities, like double strike and 6 toughness. It's really odd. I get balance and stuff, but why not make it like a 4/4 or 4/5 or something? I don't know, it just feels a bit weird. Very good Voltron commander, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 4/4. What more could you ask for? You can literally drop a 0/0 and get a 4/4. The 0/0 will obviously die, but just anything to get 4/4s. Combine this with a Launcher Procession and Mondrak, and suddenly you're doubling your tokens. This is honestly, I definitely think this is high on the list. I don't think it's S, but it's definitely A in my opinion, because mono white just getting 4/4s for little creatures is crazy. The deck is susceptible to board wipes, but so are every creature deck, right? So I definitely think this is an A though, and I will argue this one to the grave. It's just so good. Next up, God Eternal Ronus. Again, this is very close power level. This can just win games outright, and it's pretty close to having a creative behemoth. When it comes in, double the power of each other creature controlled. And I've turned a lot of people forget this gives vigilance. I'm looking at you, Rob. You know who you are, Rob. And this is incredible. It will win you games, and the word double should not be. The word double should be feared. Basically, this is an incredibly powerful card, and I would also put this one at A rank. It's just so good and so fun. Double all of them, just so you know. And obviously, if it dies, you can get it back. Helvar is something that's really disappointed me over the time I've seen it since release. Let's look at the other side first, because that's just kind of meh, whatever. It's a cheap equipment. I get it. It gives +2/+0 vigilance. Works really well with some commanders that like Dragonoid Ojutai, which is a commander I use, but not this sword. It's just 4 mana to do that. It returns the creature to its owner's hand, but even that's not very exciting. I feel like they gave it 2 very boring abilities, which doesn't become more than some of its parts. And yeah, it's 2 sides, but I just don't think you'll ever see this commander. Also, it has the strangest wording, and the wording will get you really bad. So I'm not talking about the top sentence either. Beginning of each combat, you may attach aura or equipment attached to a creature you control to target creature you control. So when I first read this ages ago, I thought it could move any equipment to any other thing, but no, it has to be equipped from something else. So if you visualize it as 2 creatures are passing over a sword to one another, you cannot pass it over if it's on the floor. It has to be in the hand of another creature. Very strange wording, and it really hurts the card when you consider there are some uncommons in Commander Legends that just move stuff over, and all of them for free to one creature, which makes this really questionable as a 4 mana mythic. I think it's Arden, which is an uncommon commander, which just is an uncommon and moves every equipment to one creature regardless of where they are. It's ridiculous. This gives your creatures double strike, but I don't really care, because it by itself it's just one of those do nothing. I don't know. This probably would have been better as an enchantment god, to be honest, but it isn't. And I actually think this is very low on my list. I'll put this at D. It's just too weak. It doesn't do anything. Hazret is another one which we don't see very often either. And I'm not really sure why, because Indestructible in red is very rare. Very similar to my arguments for Hazret and Jeru. The haste on this is crazy. You need to have few cards in your hand, but that's fine because you can discard them for 3, dealing 2 to each opponent. In Commander, this is much better because you are dealing 6 damage to 3 other players. In 1v1, it's just 2, which is fine. It's probably a pretty cool enabler for madness strategies as well. I still think this is a solid card. Is it as good as Jeru and Hazara? I think so. I still think this is B, because if you're playing an enemy red deck or an enemy green deck, they are not going to be able to kill this. They are going to struggle. Any indestructible gods that are online that easily like this pose such a huge threat to certain colour decks, and this is definitely up there in my opinion. Okay, Heliod. Well, long-time viewers know this is part of an infinite combo with the robot that shoots people. So this automatically goes into S tier. It's a pretty quick argument here because it's a known quantity. any life gain deck can use this. Putting counters on things, including itself, is just weird, really weirdly good. Whenever you get life, so yeah, this is just a fantastic card. We've seen it a lot, and it's probably the most used mono white commander I've ever seen, and that's fine. It's not even broken, even with that infinite combo, because it's a card in the deck and a card in the command zone. They're not, they're not intrinsically linked. You're not going to always have it in your hand. Yeah, it's fine. It's a perfectly good card. S tier though, because it has the infinite combo. On to the other Heliod. Wow, this one's really fantastic as well. I absolutely love this one. This one has so much potential. It comes in, it gives you another enchantment back from your graveyard, which is already really good. And the transform cost is super cheap. It's 3 in Phyrexian Blue, which can be played with life. So that's kind of like the boring side. When it flips, this is so good in an Azorius shell, especially in an Azorius shell with just artifacts or robots. Imagine your opponent's drawn 3 or 4 cards in their turn and you have an artifact build. You are just slamming down just for, all your colorless spells for 3 less. So many ways to build this. In Commander, it's slightly better because you can use wheel effects, which means that you can each discard and draw that many. And something like Wheel of Fortune will mean your color spells are 5, 6, 7 cheaper. Spells you cast cost 1 to cast for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. Your opponents. So if they each discard 2, then your cards are 6 cheaper, which is absolutely insane. This card is very high on my list. It could be biased again. Well, everything's biased, really, isn't it? But I think this is actually an A rank because it just does something. It comes in and it's pretty damn good. And Azorius shells are renowned for being control shells, so you probably can protect him pretty well as well. I just don't see why you wouldn't want to use this card. He fits in pretty much any Azorius build. Think of all the good enchantments there are. Smothering Tithe, Elspeth Conquers Death. There we go. Ilarg, the Raised Boar. This is... I don't know about this one. I find it's very slow. If this had haste, would it be broken? I still don't think it would. So whenever it attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. Now, everyone in their head thinks about Ulamog, don't they, in Eldrazi, which is the God scenario, but why do we never see this in the queue? Because it's just too slow, and it comes out like when all your creatures have gone in your hand, unless you've built a very expensive curve deck, which I suppose can be supported with cards like Sneak Attack, but unless you've got Sneak Attack and those big cards in your hand, this is just not a threat at all. 5 mana 6/6. Bear in mind, it is annoying to face if you're a red-green deck, and I'll say that again because red-green has the worst removal against creatures, because especially red players, if you're spending 2 lightning bolts on this, that's 2 cards down, and then the Ilarg flipping comes back again, doesn't it? So, but yeah, I just think, personally, I just think it's D tier for this one. Ingot and Essica. Well, I've never seen this in the queue. I think maybe once. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. That is so difficult to pull off. 3 or more mana from creatures. Good luck having those creatures out. I mean, I know it gives creatures vigilance and add 1 mana of any colour, so you need to have this and 2 other creatures out, and then play other spells. I think whoever made this was told to punish Essica because Prismatic Bridge was so damn good. This card would actually go on the E list if we had one, but sadly it's going to be on the D list. It's just terrible. Really, really terrible. Sorry to anyone that likes this card. Doesn't do anything. This one's a bit of a cheat card because it's an invasion. The invasion itself flips into a card. Now, you can't actually use this as a commander, that's why it's a bit of a cheat on the list, but I thought I'd add it nevertheless because you can still put it in the deck. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange inclusion. I just wanted to include it because it was actually a god. When it comes in, search for a god, ironically enough, or an aura or demigod, so that's pretty good in itself. And then it flips into Ephara. The sad thing is, if this was actually legal to be a commander, it'd be so powerful. It has lifelink and indestructible as long as you control 3 other enchantments. So that's pretty good because enchantments are hard to kill, and whenever another enchantment comes in, draw a card. Fantastic. It's so good. I would also put it in the same decks as you have the Heliod. But yeah, again, it's a bit of a mute argument here because you can't actually use it in the command zone. But yeah, if you could, hypothetically speaking, I think it's weird, right? Because it's like a slow Sithis. Sithis says when an enchantment comes in, draw a card, gain life. Just goes to show how broken that is at 2 mana. This is a 4 mana version. So I think if the front side was usable as well, it would probably be B. Oh, I don't know though. This is such a powerful ability just to draw cards. I know. I think this is fine at B. Yeah, just drawing cards in general for playing enchantments is ridiculous. Yeah, I think B is fine for this one. Okay, so I'm conscious how long this video is going to be, so I'll try to be a bit faster with the with the analysis here. So next up we have Yawn, God of Winter. So this is interesting. We don't really see this very often. It is actually a Sultai commander, a snow permanent. Sadly, there's not that much snow support in the game in the moment, but if there was, I think he would increase in the ranks. The other side lets you play snow permanents from the graveyard. Basically once a turn, which is also pretty good. But again, you're torn between having one or the other, which is really sad because it's hard to get both out, but you kind of want to because one of them is, the motif of the actual, the equipment of the god, and the other side supports that as well. Untapping snow permanents. Again, this was probably designed for 60 card where you can have both out simultaneously. Yeah, I like it. Kind of doubling your snow mana, but unless the support increases for Historic Brawl, I think this just goes at C at the minute. I think it's definitely got potential because only 3 mana, and doubling your mana on turn 4, 5 is kind of awesome, and recovering with Card Ring is quite nice as well. So that's pretty cool. Kevnet the Mindful, like you may have remembered me mentioning these are good for vehicle crewing because they're just terrible at most other things. This was the first wave of the gods we got, I'm pretty sure. So they're kind of just testing the waters from Amonkhet. So they didn't really know how to differ them from the Theros ones too much. So they gave them ridiculous clauses like 7 cards in hand or more, which is really difficult to pull off. Drawing a card, and then you can return a land. It's okay, but I just think it's too slow unless you want to have a vehicle crewing build. But even so, I mean, maybe if you had, so if this was a control shell, I would put it at C. But if it's like an aggro build, weirdly, I'll put it down to D because you can't stall enough. Maybe with vehicles, I'll give a C. But if you just, yeah, it's very difficult to build around. Having 7 cards in your hand, it's going to be near impossible in Historic Brawl. Clothis, this is an insane card. I don't think people realize how good this is. 3 mana means you can get this out on turn 2, which is incredible. This might be a bit controversial, but I actually think this is an S tier card. And the reason for that is you can get it on turn 2. It drains people's graveyards, which is important against so many builds, especially Muldrotha, zombie builds, any Black X, Mill Shell. It does so much for 3 mana. It's kind of ridiculous. Stops them reanimating, gives you life. So against mono red, you're probably going to win pretty much automatically. Against control, it's good because control really struggle removing it. This was designed very specifically, and it's one of the best gods they've ever made. I think this is potentially one of my favorite gods they've ever made. It's so incredibly good. If you want to play a Gruul deck and you want to beat control, this is the deck. Just so you know. And you can build it so many ways. You can go for Punisher mode, loads of enchantments that deal damage to your opponents. Aggro mode. You can even go big with walkers if you want. But yeah, definitely, in my opinion, an S rank for Clothis. Clavori, this is something you're just never going to see. It gets +4/+2 as vigilance if you have 3 or more legendary creatures. I don't know why they were so punishing for this, and because of that very first sentence, this is going into D. Anything that requires you having 3 or more creatures is so difficult. Enchantments not so bad because they're hard to kill. Artifacts, again, a bit tricky, but yeah, enchantments is probably the thing that I would forgive for having multiples of. And it just renders the rest of the card kind of terrible. Choosing a creature type to add green for, who uses tribal in a tribal? Honestly, tell me. Nobody does. Everyone's running Rusco builds, or just ridiculous blue X control shells. Yeah, it adds green for creature spell, the chosen type, or legendaries. It's okay, but do you really want to use this in your command zone when other people have Ruscos? Yeah, there's no question about it. Terrible, terrible card. Nylea is strange. She's kind of good. Making all your creatures cost one less is okay for an enchantment that can't be killed, pretty much. But again, what does she really do when she turns on line? She becomes a 5/6. Is that threatening? To be honest, no. And it's just kind of strange that yeah, it doesn't really know what it wants to be. This card it makes your creatures less. You can kind of draw cards if there's a creature on top. It's okay in the 99, but as your commander, I think it's just very uninspiring and just a bit boring. It's just utility of the card. Yeah, not a great fan of Nylea. I don't hate it. It just doesn't do anything very impactful. A Ketra, what have I been saying about things that require three or more creatures? Absolutely terrible. Goes straight into D rank again. You're just never going to be able to attack with this. I think I've probably seen this deck one time in the queue, and it's just so slow. You're noticing a pattern here. The more resources a card requires, the worse it is. So look at the D list and see all the resources and timing restrictions they have. Suddenly you get to understand 4 mana to make a 1/1 vigilance. So slow. So you're telling me you're going to spend 8 mana to get 3/6 double strike that can't block or attack, and a 1/1. No. Sadly, especially Historic Brawl, it's just not working for this one. Perforos, this is another strange issue where it's basically sneak attack on a card, but you're not going to have enough time to build up just to cast this card for 5 and then pay 3 to put things in. I mean, if you can ramp like an absolute mofo, maybe, but giving your other creatures haste for 5 mana is ridiculously bad, I think, in 1v1 because you're just probably going to die by this point. Such a shame because the original Perforos was broken as hell, and you can kind of see why they do this. If the previous card was broken, they tend to go, no, let's switch it up and go the other way. But yeah, this definitely goes into D tier, sadly. The D tier is huge, isn't it? There are just a lot of bad 1v1. Again, this is just for 1v1 in Commander. Maybe these will do a lot better, but they're just too slow. But this is why you're watching the video to try and find out. Redain is a classic Death and Taxes build. This is almost too good, too many good cards, abilities on the card, which is weird because some cards have no good abilities on it at all. Flying Vigilance is nice, Snowland and tapped, that's fringe. You're rarely going to see that be valid. Non-creature spells that cost 4, cost 2 more, that's really powerful against greedy players who don't like mana and don't like ramp. You're going to punch them, so that's fantastic. And then the other side, I think this is the best side. Basically gives you Force Field that stops damage hitting you for 1. It stops you being targeted. This is an absolutely incredible card. It's very defensive, but I think in a Death and Taxes shell, this can be really good. I actually think this is... I want to put it at B, but I think because of how defensive it is, C. And I know I'm saying its praises, but the issue is, although it's very good, it just dies very easily. I don't want to put it at B because just because it's a good defensive card doesn't mean it's a good aggressive card to finish the game out, and it doesn't give you anything else. But it's a tricky position. I'd probably say it's a C plus for this one. But yeah, definitely consider it if you're making a Death and Taxes build. Awesome card. Ronus, wow, one of the OGs. This guy is so incredibly good. One of my friends in real life, Elliot, he has this in... Well, he kind of has this deck on and off, but it always proved to me how strong mono green is. This was like the dawn of when mono green started to change, I think, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. It's just so good. It doesn't look like it's good at all, does it? It really doesn't. But 3 mana 5, the stats are insane. You only need another creature of power 4 to make this attack or block, which is so easy when the boost is there and it gives it trample. It just... Everything fell in place for this card to make it work super well. It's just super effective. And in the right shell, you will just dominate with this. And I've done a video with this guy and it was absolutely crazy. I think I would actually put this at A. It's one of the premier green aggro builds. And with any kind of anthem effects or just equipments, it's even easier to smash. You can have such an aggressive curve with this one. Next up, we have Civilian of Sea and Sky. Indestructible as long as you control 2 other merfolk. So this is kind of against the argument where I said you need lots of resources to make it work. The only thing is, I'm not too worried about that indestructible side. It's the second part which is insane. Whenever it attacks, draw card. It's such a simple sentence, right? But it's so freaking good. Another merfolk you control would want. I actually think again, it's all about the blend, right? This is definitely pushed. It's remember, this is blue we're talking about, and there's a 3/4 body for 3 on a merfolk. And I know Thassa's a 5/5, but she's a bit hard to kind of, you know, get online. The original Thassa, should I say. But yeah, this pushes the boundaries of blue aggression. And I'm pretty sure this is an A. If there was more merfolk in the format, I mean, I've never actually played with this card because it requires so many unlocking of merfolk wildcards and rares and mythics. I want to save for more, well, less specific things. But I definitely think if you're absolutely obsessed with merfolk, this is definitely an A for you, and I would highly recommend it. Just drawing a card on attack is silly, and basically anything that draws or gives you advantage, and the turn it comes down, or the turn after is silly. If you have 2 other merfolk and this out, it's got indestructible, which means board wipes are not going to scratch it. So many good scenarios for this. There's a lot of really cool merfolk enchantments that say, whenever you cast a merfolk, get a merfolk. That already helps with this. Basically, this is a crazily good card, and I would recommend it if you wanted to try mono blue aggro. Turgid, this card is broken, broken, broken. One of the saltiest, most devastating cards to ever come out. It's just absurd. And let's look at the other side first. So pretty simple. Target player loses 3 unless it is sacrificed an online permanent or discard a card. Now, bear in mind, this is target player, so this can even target yourself if you're a weirdo that wants to do madness or some other stuff. And you can pay 4 to untap it because why not? Weird flavor, just so utterly pushed. I don't know why they decided to push this one in particular, and absolutely shit all over some other cards in the same set. I'm looking at you, Joffrey. But yeah, and then the other side, Menace, because why not? And also whenever opponent sacks or discards a permanent, guess what? You get that card. It is so pushed. I don't understand what they were thinking. This plus enemy sagas is crazy because sagas, when they go away, get sacrificed. Think about that for a second. If your opponent's got a saga and it's about to go to stage 3 or the finale stage, and you play the Tergrid before that, you will get the saga, which is so stupid. And I found it out the hard way. This also gets every single fetch land. Stupid. This is definitely an S rank. Weirdly, don't see it very often. I know why, because it's 5 mana. And maybe because I'm a bit biased in Commander, I've been absolutely blown out by this. But I'll tell you this. Another reason you don't see this very often probably is because it's hard to pilot. Most Turgid players I see get rid of all the discard abilities before they drop Turgid. That is a mistake. Before you start using discard, you need to stall. Otherwise, you're not going to get any synergy. That is the biggest flaw of any Turgid player I see. And this is the curse because I'm telling you how to play it better, and it comes back to bite me because then people get better. But yes, this is absolutely broken and very salty because if, let's say, someone has a windfall effect, discards your hand, and you've got 5 bloody Eldrazi, they're getting them. Stupid. But yeah, it's got the barrier of entry being you have to be a good pilot, and I like that. Some decks just need good pilots, and some, I'm looking at you, Prismatic Bridge, don't. Next up, Thassa Deep Dwelling. This is crazy, right? Because this is, normally it would just be a utility piece, and it's like, whatever, just flickers and one thing a turn. But also they decided to give it 4 mana tap, which is weirdly viable, and I've been killed at least twice in my career with that tap ability. But yes, the main body of this is auto flicker on end step, which is broken as well. And I would say that when Agent of Treachery was legal, this would have probably been S, because it would just steal your whole army, steal everything. Since the banning, since Wizards learned, this has dropped to an A. I know it's crazy to reduce it because of 1 card, but yeah, it's still good. It's just that mono blue only has mono blue things, right? Which is still good, but if this was in the 99, I'd say this is probably S. But as a Commander A, weird. I know it's weird like that, but just the way it works because of the way colour allotments work, right? So there you go, definitely an A star. Again, you have to have the right deck for this, but most people have a flicker, and sadly, this does suffer from samey-itis, where most builds are going to be exactly the same because blue only has so many ETBs in HB. So most Thassa builds will be the same, blah, 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 the Oracle, other stuff, but yeah, you get the point. It's good. We're getting to the final cards. Locust God. This card used to be really good. And one day they printed strong cards, and this got absolutely outmatched. It's such a shame because I actually used to have this in paper, and it's so exciting. To new players, this is so exciting, and I don't want to take that away from you. But in 1v1, it ain't. It's just not going to happen, I'm afraid, guys. 6 mana for a commander, as I said before, even though it dies, comes back, it's just too expensive. And the other reason I'm going to put this in D is because you can just infinite combo. There's a lot of infinite combos with this Kindred Discovery, but that's 11 mana, and I just don't think it's viable in 1v1. Props to you if you can. I mean, yeah, if you can brainstorm and get 3 things, it's just not exciting. It's gonna be one of those things that bites me in the ass. But 6 mana, sorry guys, 6 mana just is too slow. Scorpion God, similarly quite expensive. The thing about this is this draws cards, so it automatically makes it slightly better, and it draws cards a lot easier than I know Locust God draws cards, but this is just, I don't know. I feel like the synergizes with killing stuff, and I think killing stuff is better than creating stuff, because if you remove a threat, you're saving yourself. If you're adding threats, I guess you could kill. It's close. I just think because the cost is better, it's 5 mana, 6/5. It makes a huge difference. Drawing cards by putting -1 counters. This goes crazy with Yawgmoth as well. I think I'm going to put it at C. It's, I don't know, maybe it's bias. I know I keep saying that. I know everything's biased, but yeah, I just think it's C. It's my list after all. I can say what I goddamn want. Tiamat. A lot of people always ask me, why are you so scared of Tiamat? Well, any card that lets you tutor for 5 cards is pretty busted, right? And there's a reason why you see this in the high queues. Searching for 5 combo dragons is almost always what people do. There's a number of different things people go for. Terror of the Peaks. There's like an Arachnoskeleton dragon that reanimates. There's another dragon that does also, there's a few 2-hit kills that you can get with Tiamat. Again, though, it has gone down in my estimations a little bit just because power creep, 7 mana is a hell of a lot. But this is one of those weird cards where it's not even about Tiamat. You'll probably cast Tiamat and it will die. But here's the thing. You now have 5 extra cards in your hand. So for that reason, I think I'm going to definitely put this at A. It just says draw 5 of your favorite dragons. And it's dangerous, right? Like, even if it is 7 mana, the ramp is rampant in green. Yeah, 2 for 5, dangerous. Anything that lets you tutor for more than one thing, stupid. Tom Bombadil. So this follows a long chain of cards, which is the Woober good stuff, right? Sagas make him hexproof and indestructible the more sagas you have out. And then when sagas blow up and go away, you trigger it into a new saga from the top. So it's like Prismatic Bridge. It's kind of boring because it's just like Prismatic Bridge. Power level though, we have to respect it. I'm not gonna say it's not powerful because it definitely is. I'll say it's A rank. The top part needing law counters is tricky. That's why it's not S. But the bottom part, when his saga goes away, you get anyone to replace it. It's just so silly. Yeah, it's just so powerful, so good. Not that I'm not a huge fan of Tom Bombadil, but I can see why people like it. Toralf, so there is a few combos with this where you can, do Blasphemous Acting Commander and deal like 13 damage to each creature. There's probably other ways you can do it as well. The other side, the hammer, is just negligible. No one in their right mind is going to use this side. If you're going to use Toralf, you're going to use it for this side. What do I think? This is probably one of the hardest ones I've had to judge, and I don't know why. I feel as though it's very similar to Imodane, which is the new one from Worlds of Eldraine. But I don't know, it's... The issue is, you want to combo when there's loads of creatures on the board, but in this format, if the opponent has loads of creatures and you don't have a wipe, you're probably going to die. If you do have a wipe, you're going to win, and that will be the rare occasion that you do. But it's the perfect storm, right? You need loads of creatures out, either yours or theirs. Toralf out, he survives, and a board wipe. So it's very difficult. I think for potential, I don't know, I'm really tempted to put him at D. Excess damage. Excess non-combat damage as well. I think we'll put him at C. I know there's infinite combos and stuff with him. I know. It's just so tricky to get out. I think C is fine for this guy. Not much more to say about him. Oh, I've just missed Scarab God. Okay, so Scarab God. Now this is another level. This card is another level. Out of the ones from Hour of Devastation, you got Locust God, Scorpion God, Scarab God. This is the best, and it still remains to this day one of the best. It's just so brutal. I know it seems like a lot of 5 mana plus 4 mana to resurrect any creature from any graveyard, but it's so demoralizing in Commander, especially when people play this on 9 mana and they have access to do it immediately. It's so pushed. This is definitely, I want to say A plus. I really want to put this in A plus, but I didn't put any plus rankings here. I'd say a good pilot A, an immense pilot S. But yeah, it doesn't take much to pilot because you just get the best creature at the graveyard, and that's not even talking about the lose X, scry X. The reason why it's not an S, I think, definitely because 5 mana is a lot, even if you can get them back. But yeah, it's so demoralizing, this guy. It's so difficult to get rid of. It gets back your favourite creatures. If there's any mill in their deck and they mill your big creatures, you're going to be screwed. 4 mana instant speed, might I add, to get a copy of it, and it's a 4/4. A lot of the time, it's going to upgrade your little 1/1s, 2/2s. Imagine this gets back an Esper Sentinel, and now it's a 4/4. You're screwed. You're just so screwed. Yeah, and that's why it's A rank. Don't need to explain that much more. Super strong. Next up, Valky. So the front side is pretty terrible, in my honest opinion. I've tried to be optimistic about it. Stealing a card temporarily and becoming it's okay, but it just, again, as I said before, against the higher tiers, people just aren't using creatures. Not much anyway. This side though, this is the absolute tits. This is crazily good. More plays the better. 1v1 it is very demoralizing as well. It's one of the most impactful planeswalkers ever made. 7 mana it has to be. Playing stuff for free. Not for free, sorry, you can play them when you exile stuff. Exiling artifact or creature is viable. Super cool flavor lore. It's Loki after all. Yeah, it looks inconspicuous, but I definitely think this is high ranking, and I would actually put this at A, but only for the Planeswalker side, which is harder to get rid of. But yeah, when it comes in, you get an emblem. You may play cards exiled with Tibalt, and you can spend mana as though it's mana of any color. Bear in mind, even if they kill Tibalt, you still have that emblem, as long as stuff was exiled with Tibalt, so you can still play stuff. But yeah, A rank for the Tibalt side, the Planeswalker side. Okay, and last but not least, definitely not last but not least, Xenagos. This is stupidly good. I love it. Not too broken. I mean, it's getting there. It's hard to kill, very difficult to kill, and it will normally win the game the turn it comes down turn after. You can subdue them by slowing them down, but yeah, 5 mana is a little bit slow. But once you get this out and you've got green in the deck, I think you're going to punish your opponent super hard, and this is super great, and it's just terrifying in every format this is in. It's an absolutely terrifying card, and yeah, I'm definitely going to put that at A. Okay, so tell me what you guys think I've put in the wrong tiers below. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's taken a long time to go through this, so I do appreciate you probably had to come back multiple times if you found me interesting. And if you like the tier list, again, this covers the 41 gods currently in Historic Brawl, as told to me by Scryfall. I think there's about 60-ish outside of Historic Brawl in total. So missing about 19-ish cards, I think, maybe. But yeah, this list is accurate as of today. So hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support the channel, go to my description below where you can donate via Ko-fi or become a patron and support me monthly to help me produce more content like this. And if you like this style of video, just give us a heads up. Tell me if you want to see more different things reviewed, and maybe suggest what you'd like to see reviewed. I went for gods because it was I think it's pretty valid. A lot of these cards are in the queue, and I wonder what else we can do next. Maybe Planeswalkers, or maybe, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be serious. It could be something funny, I suppose. But these serious videos tend to do better because people like to win, and that's fine. Until next time. Did you know that you can help my channel by watching another one of my videos? Go ahead, you know you want to.